Hello and welcome to Macro Tuesdays here on Landy's Crypto Corner. Today is September 24th, 2024, and my apologies for not having a Macro Mondays video, but I did have some things that came up that prevented me from actually being at the computer and recording, although you might have seen me in some Spaces events in the meantime on Monday. I was not able to get a recording out, but some important things have occurred since we last spoke on Saturday because I missed the Friday video. But we should be able to get things back on track. I'm actually going to skip the Wednesday video and do the Friday video this week because we do still need to see price develop over this week. I want to give a few days in between videos for that daily structure to keep developing. But let's get into it. We're, of course, looking at Bitcoin, as always. And, Bitcoin has essentially hit all the areas that we've been talking about. This was much the same thing that I said on Saturday, which is normally a Friday wrap-up video. But, what we wanted to see for the weekly didn't occur on Sunday. But, as I mentioned in that video, we can still look for that to possibly occur in this week or weekly candle. Now, when looking at the daily, there is some pretty clear indication of what's going on here. And I mentioned this on Saturday. We had the lower low down here off of this little uptrend on the daily here. We had a trend break to the downside. Then we had a lower high, higher low, and then we had, after that lower high was put in, this is now lower low, lower high structure. So technically a downtrend, but not a complete downtrend. Usually it's a downtrend reversal setup. In this case, it was held off by the bulls with a higher low and then a trend break right back to the upside here, and then a run right back to this high at around $65,000. To be fair, Bitcoin hasn't quite hit that area yet, but I did want to call out the structure here. So, Bitcoin did hold that higher low. It did break the lower high, so we did get that structure change. So we have higher low, higher high structure in place. Not a complete trend right now, but a trend reversal showing itself. So what is the criteria for the bulls right now? We're going to go ahead and get rid of this text. This is more for X here, as it doesn't have the ability to put thumbnails up, but at least when people browse it, they can see the actual first few seconds of the video here before it starts playing through. So we do have a trend break structure to the upside. We have a reversal in play for the bulls. This is very good. After getting through this zone at around 61,800, then it was 62,800. Bitcoin found some resistance at that $63,800 to $64,000, especially on a close. Did wick above 64, 63,800 technically. Looking 64K to this high over here at $65,000. This is the next big area for Bitcoin to get through and recover above. Of course, that is the prior cycle's first high that it put in, first major high at $65,000 in 2021, before going down for a long form, on the daily at least, long form reaccumulation and move back to the upside to make a slightly higher high at $69,000. Of course, that was a almost technically perfect schematic off of that first high at $65,000. It was nearly perfectly lining up with a Wyckoff reaccumulation schematic. But that's for the nerds out there that like to hear that stuff. You can always go back if you didn't notice it at the time, or if you're just learning now and weren't around at the time, you can look back at that structure as a really good example of a Wyckoff reaccumulation structure or schematic. Now, this is one of the charts that I was working off, a very simple chart just to kind of illustrate the trend and, break the downtrend. Obviously have higher low, higher high structure. That's what we were looking for. I'm going to let you know, right off the bat, before we get into support and resistance areas, this is still the higher low that needs to be held. On a swing basis or a wick basis, if you will, down there at 57.5. Technically, it's 57,477. or 57.5, just to say it easily. Um, and realistically, back below this lower high, if Bitcoin were to fail to find any support, on any of the structures over here, higher than this 60,600, then I'd be potentially looking for this low to be in danger, just from a trend perspective and horizontal support and resistance perspective relative to this most recent trend that is formed, right? And this is all, this was prior downtrend, prior uptrend, prior trend break. This is the most recent trend. So I would want to see at minimum, this holding there when just looking at this from the trending structure perspective. Let's go ahead and turn this off and turn on my typical areas of interest chart, which I have called the accumulation distribution zones, just so that people kind of understand essentially upside and downside. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. You can see how we had previously talked. You talked about this quite a bit. In the risk zone, when this low was put in, where did we want to see Bitcoin run to if it got above this 58,400? Well, right back to 60,000 to like 60,300 or so. At the bottom side of the recovery zone, you see that nice close open right there. Break of that lower high on a closing basis on Wednesday of last week, and then a move right to that 63.8 top side of the recovery zone. You can see that this was an area of resistance for quite a few days here, and then we got the Tuesday candle close above. Now it's still Tuesday for me in terms of what day it is on the calendar, but Bitcoin's living in the future. It is Wednesday for Bitcoin. So the Tuesday candle has closed. For me, it closes at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, or 8 p.m. Eastern if you're interested. And of course, it opens right up into the next day. So in this case, getting the close above 63.8 is a good close, right? It closed at 64,272. And, the next area to really run to is kind of its local highs here around the upper $64,000 area. We see that Bitcoin is currently trading at around 64,391, so just shy of 64.4. If it does start to run its shorter term highs up here from the past couple of days around that 64.7 to 800, then I would look for an official test of this swing high around 65 and probably even up into the bottom side of the pivot zone here at 65.5. Now, again, any kind of closes above there, and I'm looking right to one of the biggest key areas for me is 67,272, and I'm very specific about that. I get a lot of questions, and I show this just about every video, so I want to just show it one more time. I also make reference to this area as an area of interest, during some of the Spaces events that I'm in, and 67,272 is the first major lower high of a downtrend in this entire range that Bitcoin's been playing in the past few months, right? It's been more than a few months now. It's been like 4 months, and the range has stepped down gradually over time, which, to be quite honest, in the longer term structure is nice and bullish. So in this case, this is the first major lower high of a downtrend. There was lower highs, but in the context of an uptrending structure on the lows still. So first major downtrending lower high was at 67,272. The second major lower high was at 65.5, basically retesting that prior cycle $65,000 swing high. And then we had the lower low down here at 56.5. Of course, so we got the 53.5, the 49, and 52.5 down here. But in terms of a pivot zone, off of this first downtrending structure, you could see that 67,272, after we got a higher low, higher high structure put in, where did it run to? Right to 67,272, found daily resistance, green candled its way back to these lower highs over here, and topped out at around $72,000 on the highs here, double top, but it was holding this pivot zone at 67,272 and into it down to this second lower high of that first downtrend. That was, the area that it was trying to hold as support. Then we got the first lower high up here, which is the run the highs above here zone that I have marked on the chart. This was the second major downtrend here. You can see that after it put in that first major lower high here, it's a major lower high once we saw it confirmed. It didn't look like much at the time, but it was showing weakness, obviously. Where did it sit? Well, it closed right on, when it confirmed this high, it closed it right on 67,272 here. From there, it tried to hold that for a couple dailies before breaking down to 65.5 and then retested 67,272 as resistance. And then down into the remainder of that trend. Then we had a bit of a character change on this third major downtrend of the range, where I'd mentioned this even at the time, is like, the first major downtrending highs were in this 67,272, and then one step above there at that $70,000 essentially, or just above $70,000 here. Now the second, or I'm sorry, that was the second major downtrend of the range, and then the third major downtrend of the range, the lower high, because this was a big trend break. The first lower high was right here on a close at around 61.7 to 800, and then 62.800 on a wick, and that was a much more palatable lower high for bulls to go grab and try to hold as support. We saw the nice higher low structure, the run back to $65,500, and then big dump off to the equal low closes, not wicks, closes here at around $64,000. Higher low swings as it relates to it as well. And then we had a structure break, lower high, higher low. So this downtrend here, where was its lower high? Technically, it was just a trend break down. So the closing lower high was over here. Once the criteria was met of closing above that, we were looking for a move to the top side to retest 65.5. Above there, I'm sorry, 65,000. And then above there, I'm looking to the pivot zone, 65.5 to 67,272. Above there, 68 to $70,000 essentially. Yes, it's like 68.3 to 70,200. You just call it 68 to 70. You need to be eyes on the chart around this high structure, which was this first major lower high of the second downtrend here. Above there, I'm looking 70 to 72 as a big area where this double top came in, obviously into this green zone above here. Above here, the bull run begins. Now, I would say on longer term timeframes, we might actually see above their new higher highs, but still kind of playing around at the edges of the range before things really get going. Obviously, we'll assess that as it begins to happen, whenever that might happen. But essentially, above like 71.5 right here on the closes for the dailies. You can see all these closes in here with the wicks above into like 72, almost 73 here. And then the all-time high at 73,835. I would be looking for essentially 73 to 75 is like a zone. I showed this in the fibs in one of the macro videos. I think it was last week. I'm not going to go back to fibs this week. We're going to do it on Friday in preparation of the monthly close and quarterly and stuff. We're going to look at some more fibs and take a look at potentials in the future above all the known overhead resistances, so blue skies, and then kind of talk about what that might look like if structure holds up throughout this week. But 73 to 75, 75, 78, 78 to 80, mid to low 80s from there is kind of what I'd be looking. And then, some front runnable areas of interest around ahead of 100K, around the 90 to 95 region or so. But we'll get into that when it's a little bit more relevant. Right now, if Bitcoin does start closing back below 63.8, be aware of this local structure at the highs here. If it doesn't push higher, of course, right around 62,380. So if it comes back to retest around here, but doesn't close, retest around this first lower high of this third major downtrend. If it's to retest that area but doesn't close below there, then there wouldn't be a confirmed high end. So it could even pull back in lower term timeframes and retest this area as long as it's not closing below it. If we start to see closes below this area here, you can see the two swings down here around that 62,380, 62,400. We might be looking for Bitcoin to then come down and test the bottom side of the recovery zone around this this lower high that was just broken of this current trend that has now formed an uptrend, right? So essentially somewhere around, mid $60,000 region down to around $60,000 at the edge of the recover zone here. Anywhere below there, looking 58 for, likely looking for a retest or a test of this higher low structure. Any closes below the higher low structure at 57.5, and I'm looking, right back to 55,850 as another big area of interest, and then down into the danger zone, below 55,850, essentially $54,000, anywhere in between here. 54, big key area, and then 53. This is a big one because this was the wick low. So we had the first big low here at 56,500. These all came in on volume. I don't typically show you volume. Maybe I should. I do get some questions, but these all came in on volume as well. Not quite as big as this one, but 56.5, 53.5, 49, and then we've got our 52.5 here, right? So we haven't seen any closes below the wick low of the second major downtrend of the range, which is indicating that this is a potential turnaround spot, this entire structure. It's also W for winner. We all know that that's going to be a pattern that plays out every time, right? But this is indicative of some changes going on some longer term timeframes as well. So as the daily progresses with its structure and closing on those longer term timeframes, we can go and take a look at those structures here in just a moment. And weekly is going to be pretty important to understand. I will check on the 5 day as well, because it's a much cleaner chart than the weekly, quite frankly. And if the 5 day is going to start breaking out above $65,000, it's going to confirm before the weekly, and likely we'll have that confirmation on the weekly shortly thereafter, or at least keep an eye on that 5 day as the as structure develops, if there is a trend break. But in this case, we do want to take a look at volatility and where the areas of interest on the Bollinger Bands are. So volatility is still, even though the Bollinger Bands are expanding, volatility is still remaining kind of low and below the moving average there, 49 or 41 under 49. So we're seeing price expansion in the bands in the context of this being a mean reversion back to this high at $65,000. So Bitcoin needs to get above it to start getting re-expansion of price and keep the expansion going on the Bollinger Bands. So that's something that's a little bit more complex of a topic. I will explain this fully in an upcoming series where I break down my 4 keys to trading, which is trend, support and resistance, volatility, and it's 4 keys to charting technically, but leads to setting up your trades. But trend, support and resistance, volatility, and then momentum. The first 3 create the fourth. You cannot have the fourth without the first 3, and I wouldn't put weight. I'd put weight equally across all of them, right? So that is something to understand, and what you do is you look for the confluences between them. We'll get to that. I will have some announcements hopefully soon. They're not going to be incredibly long videos. They're going to be tailored towards people who are new to technical analysis, and those who might be familiar with analysis but not familiar with the way that I'm doing my particular analysis. I think that if you watch me enough, you probably get it though. Back below 63.8 and below the upper first standard deviation of the Bollinger Bands here does make the bottom side of the recovery zone available, where the basis band is starting to come in, around that, in this case, it's coming in at 59.9, but essentially $60,000 the bottom side of the recovery zone. So below 63.8, just watch this local structure, like I was just saying earlier. Anywhere below the upper first, but if it fails to close below 62.380, 62.4, then it's probably safe from for a little bit for a little bit on the daily until it loses the upper first and stays inside of this zone. But essentially, we have confluence at the bottom side of the zone with the basis band anywhere below there, and obviously the risk zone is fair game. We even have the lower first coming in there around that, just above the bottom side there at 55,850. We have lower first starting to curl up off of that 55,850 support and resistance area. Anywhere below there, we'd be looking down to the bottom side of the risk, 55,850, all the way down to the danger zone, which is really essentially just this low over here. But, the lower seconds coming in there as well. Lower thirds even coming in down at the bottom side of distribution, kind of a little bit of a front run of that 49K. Obviously, if Bitcoin were to dump out, I would be looking at the way the bands are positioned for volatility levels and as it relates to support and resistance, I'd be looking for these areas to be extremely biddable areas for the bulls. That doesn't mean that they'd be successfully bidding them, but that would be kind of in a dump off scenario. If trend starts to head down, then we'll see the bands curl around with it. To the upside, essentially the upper second is right in the pivot zone, so 65.5 to 67.272. Above there, we've got the next big area where the upper third is coming in, 68 to 70K basically. So we do have a lot of confluence there. If we started to see closes above the upper second, we would need to see closes above the top side of the pivot zone at 67.272. Upper second splitting the middle of that pivot zone right now. If we wanted to see continuation of expansion, we would need to see it immediately start heading up above that 67.272 into that $68,000 to $70,000 area. So that is something to be aware of as it relates, as kind of volatility levels relate to the support and resistance areas of interest. If we go ahead and look at momentum, so we've covered trend, support and resistance, volatility, and momentum here is the next and last piece. And this is a regular Stoch. It's in the overbought zone. Stoch RSIs might have reset lower. I don't use a Stoch RSI because, as you probably noticed when I clicked on the chart just a moment ago, I use an RSI. I don't want to double up on indicators. I don't need an indicator of an indicator. That's what Stoch RSI is. Stoch RSI is measuring the velocity of RSI, or the speed of RSI, and in terms of its, you can almost think of it like the volatility of RSI, but it's the velocity of RSI. In this case, this is a regular Stoch, which is reading close over close price momentum, so it's measuring the actual price chart for closes. We'll take a look at RSI as well in a moment, but we just want to get the pivot here. 64,175 would keep the momentum pivot, or would keep the Stoch pointed up here in the overbought zone. Keep in mind when you're using a regular Stoch, this can stay overbought for an extended period of time and even potentially bullishly reset. We've even seen this a little bit in this zone already. Once it starts to more aggressively lose it, that's when we're looking for more aggressive pullbacks and maybe even more aggressive corrections of trend, if it still maintains an uptrend, for instance, and getting nice bullish resets. Good examples of this are back here in not August. That was not good. But we had bullish resets here before trend turned around back in September. We need 2023. So there was a bunch of bullish resets in here. I'd have to actually go back and show you. Maybe we'll do a little bit of a study in that in the video later this week on Friday. Just so I can kind of show you what I mean, at least. But momentum looks fine right now. It could, we're also seeing Bitcoin right up against resistance. So I would not be surprised, if that momentum pivot turns down. Obviously, we'd likely see a daily high put in. A daily high right now technically would be put in anywhere below the upper first here on the bands and yesterday's close, essentially. No, because on the close it would have to be that 62.5, 62.4 region on a close right now. If today's candle were the candle to do it, but if another candle did it, let's say we just get a little doji up here, then it would be around 63.3, 63.400 to actually paint the high and confirm it. But until we see that, up and to the right is the name of the game. Just be on the lookout for pullbacks to 62 and a half, pullbacks to this high, 61.8 to 62.8 that start closing in that area. High will be in, likely looking for a little bit more of a correction down into the recover zone. And then the criteria will take over from there in terms of conditions that I just laid out. Let's go ahead and take a look at the longer term time frames. You have to forgive me. I'm pretty wiped out. If I sound wiped out, that's because I am wiped out. Everything is fine. I'm fine. Just tired. Need to sleep some more. Let's go ahead and take a look at that weekly. We'll also take a look at the 5-day in just a second, though. But one of the things that I was looking for on the weekly was closes above 60,670. I want to see technically anywhere above 59,825 would have painted the low and confirmed it on a closing basis, but I still wanted to see moves to hold above 60,670, and we saw that with the weekly close coming in near this lower high already. and Bitcoin already testing into the lower high above the close open there. And right now trading on it at around that 64,250 on the close open high here. If Bitcoin does close above the wick high at $65,050 or 65K, generally speaking, that would be a trend break, and that would be a character change on the weekly, and that would be more bullish than bearish, at least locally, to go test up to the next area, 68 to 70, and then the 70 to 72, and then the all-time high up there at the 73 835 area and higher. Then I would, if it does break the downtrend like this week, for instance, then I would start to look for, the next set of criteria, go and set the high or go and test these further prices up if it's going to. And then we need to see at minimum another swing higher low, or preferably a closing higher low, and then off to the races, because we want to see trend form, a trend reversal pattern. And that once it breaks the downtrend, we need to either see the swing higher low structure or a closing higher low structure with that swing higher low. So swing higher lows would be like the same candle. I'll point them out when they're relevant. So let me see here. What is the weekly momentum chart looking like? Oh, I didn't look at RSI on the daily, but we can always do that. There's a lot of people pointing out like the hidden bear divs. Hidden bear divs are corrective. There's no in-trend bearish divergence on the daily yet. But we'll go take a look at that. You got Bitcoin nicely bouncing off of the bearish control zone for a regular stoke here on the weekly. The momentum pivots 61, 167. All the same criteria that I talked about on the daily in terms of trend, support, and resistance. We just talked about trend on the weekly, but in terms of support and resistance areas are going to be relevant, which is why I don't talk about them on the weekly. You can always just mark your weeklies because those are major areas of interest locally for the closes as support and resistance. We do have a nice crossover of the moving average. We don't have a trend break yet, so this is the week that we got to look out for a trend break on the weekly, and then we can start getting a little bit more excited, because then we would have moving average crossover with RSI closing two successive closures. No, one. Yeah, one confirmed successive closure above the moving average there, because the candle was live last week. We need to see this week actually close it above there again, of course. The moving average is sitting at $61,000. So it is actually still within striking distance for Bitcoin if it were to put in a high locally on the daily here. But where is the edge of the bullish control zone in terms of number? Edge of the bullish control zone is 73,100. So right around the all-time high. Bearish control zone, just for reference, is at $44,000. So it did step down quite a bit since we looked at it on Saturday. That would be essentially, when looking at this lower high from the bear market, it would be just kind of like right inside of it. No, I'm sorry. This is one of the locals. This is 45.5. It's the monthly is what I was thinking. Sorry, not the weekly, because the weekly has got 47,000. So this 45.5 to 48,240 high, lower high in the monthly. It's kind of digging into that area for the bearish control zone. Tells me that that's, with production cost, prices are still around $42,500, $43,000 for the electrical cost. Yeah, I think things are starting to, anecdotally, I think that if this is the time to do it, this would be the time for things to start to resolve themselves to at least testing higher in this local range, a little bit more, maybe a daily pullback or something before then, and then possibly break out of this structure and actually go on the run, starting to look that way. Now you can see how ugly this weekly chart is, because we have a higher low close with a lower low swing. We have a higher low swing with a lower low close over here. So it's kind of a goofy structure. When you go and you look at it, it's still the same criteria. Close above $65,000 breaks the downtrend, right? But then we need to see, like I said, either a swing higher low or closing higher low from there. When you look at the 5 day, it's nice and clean. So the only thing that's a little bit different is we still have a swing higher low on the 5 day with a closing lower low. But it's very, very clear that we could get another 65. If we see $65,000 close above, We just need to see a higher low structure develop from there on the 5-day. And it will usually, if it's not just green candling its way to the heavens there, which is what we will likely see when we see it actually get rolling to the upside for the run. We'll probably see some higher low structure here, maybe even locally. I'm of two minds of that because we're also like right before some major economic events. And yes, I do consider the election an economic event because markets do respond to who might possibly be the next president. So, yeah, and even Bollinger Bands are telling me, like, hold your horses unless we see closes above essentially $70,000. Then maybe we get through this little bit of resistance up here. I say a little bit. The structure's been developing for a long time. But maybe the shorts just give up above 65 or above 70,000, and then it's just clear sailing from there. They're going to be lower term time frames of interest, but who knows? We'll cross those bridges when we get to them. Again, for like the 5-day, the structure is actually starting to paint kind of what I want to see. Closes above the upper second at around 67,420. Haha. Too bad it's not 69,420. We get some meme numbers in there. But it closes above the upper second, that close above $70,000. They're going to kick off expansion to the upside. And of course, still just have to get through this resistance over here. But yeah, eventually just 72 essentially, and then 73.35, and then it's like it's full on expansion on the 5-day to the upside. This is really starting to paint I can't say bullish picture yet because we got to see $65,000 break, and then we need to see some further structure developed, and of course start closing above 70 to kick off expansion. But there is the potential there for the bulls to start taking advantage of this situation. Bears are definitely at the hot seat right now, especially above 65K. Below, this last higher low swing, as it's compared to this lower low over here at 49K. I will tell you that would not look good because that would be expansion to the downside at minimum to go test the swing low, or anywhere in between this close and swing. And lower, right, into the structures over here, your 50 to 50, or your 45 to 48 to 40, 49K essentially, but then even bringing into play that spike down to that monthly at, yes, this is a monthly retest. There's a monthly close at 38,500 from the prior cycle, and then there's this whole area of interest essentially. It's like on the 5-day and weeklies, it's basically 47 and 42 and a half and so on and so forth. But what is the 5-day looking like? When does this close? So this is going to close the next time that I talk to you, I believe, right? So 28. This we'll have a new 5-day by the time I talk to you on Friday. So this is going to be closing on today's Tuesday for me. This is the Wednesday candle. So Thursday, yeah, we'll be talking about this on Friday. We'll see where this is on the new open. So that will probably give us a little bit of an indication of what to look for coming into the weekend. So that is kind of my take on that. Weekly, again, same thing, just close above $65,000. Hold that same area to the downside. Obviously below the lower seconds, not good for the weekly. Not as quite an aggressive picture on the weekly for potential for the bulls to take. Again, they have to take it by breaking the downtrends, but being above the basis is what the bulls want, and go and test that upper first. Basically 67,272. That's basically where the upper first is. It's about 67,343, but it's right around that main area that I just showed you earlier. Above that upper first, and then 6870. What's it doing? It's testing this lower high right here. And then above there, we're looking 70 to 72 over here. And then the all-time high and higher. And that would be kicking off expansion to the upside, essentially above the upper second. Gets a price above $72,000 is essentially above the upper second, which would kick off expansion on the weekly time frame. So these are things to look forward to. This is pretty important. I think, I want to title this like this is the important week, but I don't think it necessarily is. Maybe it's the important week because it's coming into the quarterly close. Just a little bit of preview of the quarterly. We have higher highs on a close and swing on the quarterlies. Things are fine. Bears trying to scare people are, just maybe taking advantage of the psychology of what's been happening in the markets. So yeah, I think I covered everything. I apologize if I missed something. I'll try to maybe review this video at like 5x speed and see if I missed anything that I wanted to say and get it into Friday's video. Of course, there's going to be Spaces events that I'm going to be hosting throughout the week still, or co-hosting. Wednesday, we've got Chop and Charts with Benny and Maines. That's a new one, so please check that one out. We had a lot of fun the last time the first event that we ran together. I had a blast. I hope and I think that they had a blast as well. I'm really looking forward to talking to them again. That should be a lot of fun. That'll be on Wednesday. Thursday, I probably have an event with that weird sock account guy. We'll see. He, again, just so you know, that sock account, he just randomly pops up spaces. You must be prepared. If you ain't watching the sock, you're missing out. So keep an eye on that one. And then Friday, I believe Goyos and I are going to have another event. I just got some really cool news, by the way. Goza and I might be hosting an event fairly soon. We'll see. This is unconfirmed, but many of you might who have been in some of those Spaces events might know the guys from Block City, Chris and Rav. They're working with Scott Page, and we might be getting into an event to also host Scott Page at some point here in the future, hopefully soon. That would be really awesome. We got to talk to him a little bit when those guys were in Nashville. And if you don't know who Scott Page is, Scott Page of Pink Floyd is probably he's best known for, but he's just an all-around excellent musician in the Hall of Fame as well. But he's also like I guess everybody calls him like a technologist, but like he's a business guy and really interested in technology and software and he go look at Seventh Level. That's him, by the way. Toontown. I think it was Toontown. I got to go look again because I played all those games. He made games that defined my childhood at one point. Really cool. Can't wait to talk to him again. Hope that comes together. So keep an eye out for that one. And you all have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. With all of that being said, Landy out.